Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Oddie's Angling TV. We're coming from Lyreen Fisheries at Maynooth in County Kildare, home of Ireland's biggest carp of 41 pound, I think it is. There's a couple of big lumps in this lake. We reckon there's about 160 fish, give or take. There could be a few more. At the moment we've got hail falling. When the sun is out it can get really warm typically, but when that sun disappears behind them clouds, by golly, you can feel the temperatures really drop away. Now right in front of me is an island which you can see, and this focuses in. There's a marker which is the boundary of where the snags are, just behind that, and right in front of that island there's another marker there that marks the other boundary, so you kind of know not to go beyond that. Now the lads have been dyeing the lake. Last week they dropped dye in, like a blue dye, and that's the first course that they take to combat the weed in the summertime. And they've just been going around the lake this morning dosing the lake with black dye, and the lake has gone pitch black. I was getting a bit worried that because the water's gone so black that the fish wouldn't see my bait. Didn't have to worry about that, because a couple of hours later, after the dye going in, when the lake's at its blackest, I got a flying take on my left hand rod, which is over towards that island, and then I got an 18 pounder out of that, and then I had another take immediately after putting the fish back. My middle rod went, which is kind of more over to this side here near that marker, and that ripped off as well, but I must have bumped it on the strike, or I just didn't connect with the fish, which does happen, you know. So they're the conditions we're fishing in. Not the best, but do you know what? It's better to be out here having a go than staying at home twiddling your thumbs. It's really chucking down the hail now, and all the delcums are going to go mad because they don't like the vibration of the big lumps of hail hitting them. Funny enough, this is usually the kind of weather you get a take on. Here we have a 25-2 mirror carp from Lyreen, caught on a magaliner from a little hole that was shown by one of the regulars here, and absolutely a beautiful lump of French fish now living in Ireland. So we'll get a few pics and we'll put her back. It's March the 13th. This is my third session here. Blanked the first time. That was basically a 2-day affair. We already made a video on that one. This is my second trip in a week. I did a quick overnighter last Thursday night. It pissed down out of the heavens and it was a rotten night. I came down in the dark in the lashes of rain, stuck up the bivvy, got the rods out, got into the bag and pretty much had a nice kip. Everything that could go wrong went wrong from an angling point of view. I'm not going to go into that too much. I'm not going to dwell on it, but that's what the thing about fishing is. It's a learning curve. You learn by your mistakes. Now this is day 2. I arrived last night. As I said, March the 12th I arrived last night in the dark. I decided to get here before anybody else could get here. I knew there were people due down today, so I wanted to nip in and be crafty and get the swim I wanted, which is this one here. This is number 7. Number 7 on the lake is kind of a hot spot. Got a lot of nice features to fish to. So, as I said, this is the end of my first full day. I arrived last night. We had -4 to 5 last night. It was Baltic cold. Even I had condensation on the inside of my bivvy freeze. I came out and everything was rock solid and white with the frost. Half the lake was frozen. The whole bottom half lake was frozen, and back of the islands there it was freezing as well. Now as I filmed this section, it's been a long day. The sun's just about to dip down and we're going to go into a full night of pretty cold weather by the looks of it. The sky is cleared. We've had snow, hail, sleet today. Temperatures have been hovering around the 5 or 6 mark. When the sun came out and it came down, it was absolutely glorious, nearly t-shirt weather. And as soon as the sun went, it was back down to 2 or 3 degrees. Really cold. I've been really lucky. I've had 2 fish today and I've had 4 occurrences. Running very quickly through my setups. This rod is fished along the margins. There's a hole down there in amongst an old died off lily bed. That's fished on a chod. I'm using a solar pop-up on that one. And I had an occurrence on that rod today. I had a take as I was fixing the bobbin. I'd only just cast out, I'd only just settled, and as I put the bobbin in, the whole thing slammed round. I hit it and pulled out the fish. Middle rod, I'm fishing straight out to the right. There's a marker out there and I'm fishing just off it. Fishing single hook baits today because it is so cold. It's real winter fishing, even though it is in spring. So I've just got basically a snowman on that rod, again solar baits, and on this rod out to another point, there's a nice little deep hole there that I've found through the help of one of the guys here, Darren. Big Darren gave me a few pointers of where to put a bait. As I say, you're going to find that the light is really shifting fast because the sun is just dipping behind the hills there now. So I'm going to make this quick and we'll come back to you in the morning. So all the fish have come to the maggots so far, but they're not just normal maggots. I have them dipped in a cocktail of things that make them even better. And I have to say it's a real winner for me. So I've had 2 fish on that. I've had another run on the middle rod that I didn't connect to again. Hit it, I mean it was slammed up to the butt, hit it and nothing there. It's one of those, must have just been nicked, and as you hit it, yeah, you pulled out of it. So 4 takes in these conditions, I'm absolutely over the moon, I'm chuffed. So I'll get back to you in the morning. I don't know what tonight's going to bring. It's to get very cold tonight. There's going to be another hard frost tonight. And then tomorrow I think there's rain coming in and it's to get a little bit milder again. But it's to be a lot more cloudy tomorrow, so fingers crossed we'll have a couple more fish. But I'm not going to grumble, you know, 25 and 18 this time of year, superb fishing. Anyway, there's me mate on the phone, time for me to go. As I've already said, we're kind of bivvy bound. It's not the best of weather today, and so I just thought I'd show you something I picked up only recently at the Carp show over in Essex. This is a Tracker NXG PVA bag. Now I have to say, my mate Mark was the one who put me onto this. He said, oh, I have to get one of these while I'm over here. These are really dinky. I already had a Chub PVA bag, which was a real good little system. Bit more bulky though, but I have to say this really is class. Now basically what you have is this lovely neoprene handle, and it's a nice compact bag. It doesn't get, you know, sort of chewing away in your main bags. So on the top you have basically a nice holding area for all your bags of PVA, which I have plenty of. There's a nice zippy bag here, a nice zippy little pocket here if you want to put some extra stuff in that. On this side you have loads of little pockets here for your bits of PVA string, your tape and whatever, and then you have your area here where you can knock up your bags, and when they're made up you can actually put some small little made up PVA bags into this little pouch, zip it up, and it's got that special kind of lining to keep everything waterproof and keep everything nice and tidy, and then it's a case of just when you're done you can empty it out and give it a tap out if you've got a bit of crumbs in there. But a real dinky little system. You can, as I said, keep all your tubes in there. I actually normally keep all my my quarter tubes in here as well. They fit in up here nicely, and the whole lot zips up. A really nice little piece by Tracker. So if you're in the market to get yourself a little PVA bag, definitely check them out. I'm glad Mark put me onto this because it's a real natty little device for keeping all my bits and pieces tidy. So, as you can see, very cold night. We had temperatures down to about -4 last night. Bivvy is frozen solid. About half the lake is frozen solid overnight. Hopefully we get a bit of a warm spell later today, and that will all thaw out quite quickly, because it did yesterday. I mean, give you an example. You can see by the landing net how frozen everything is. It really is very, very cold here. White frost everywhere. Very lucky yesterday. Had 2 fish off this near rod, 18 and 25, and according to the weather forecast, and you know at this time of year you have to really monitor the weather forecast, they're looking at it going quite mild today in comparison to what we've had, about 9 degrees, and they call that mild. The wind's going to be changing because it's been an easterly, then it was a northeasterly, went to a northwesterly, now it's going to swing round to a southwesterly or a westerly today. I'm going to bring in a bit of cloud, there could be a bit of rain, a few showers, but more importantly it's going to heat everything up, and it's going to stay fairly like that until the weekend. So I have one more day, one more night here, so we'll have to kind of see what happens. At the moment you can't recast, can't do anything, and it's just a matter of let's wait and see what happens. But it's going to be at least another 2 hours before everything thaws out, so I think I'm going to put the old stove on, get a cup of tea into me, and get a porridge on. I'll catch you in a short while. It's morning time, everything's beginning to thaw out. At least the frost has gone off the rods and the ice is beginning to fade away. The wind's picking up a bit, the sun's come up. It's about 20 to 9 in the morning. It's going to be another hour before everything's fully thawed out, so I thought I'd take this opportunity to show you some of the rigs we're using. Well, basically I've only got 2 rigs out. I tell a lie, I've got 3 rigs out, but on the far rod I'm using maggots, and that's what's produced all the fish. Now, it's not just normal maggots, it's maggots with a special additive put in, stimulin amino by Solar Tackle. I find that it gives the maggots a bit of a kick. If you put it in long enough before you go fishing, they seem to absorb all the smell, and when it hits the water it does give off a stronger signal, a food signal in my mind, and it's done me well so far on this trip. Don't forget the conditions are pretty crap. This is technically winter fishing. I know we're in spring and you know it's the middle of March, but the conditions are as bleak as any winter session that you're going to get. So as I said, we've got a couple of rigs that I'm using. On the middle rod I'm just fishing a single hook bait. I say single, it's half a pop-up snowman. I'm using the club and cream, and then basically the white pineapple and cream solar pop-up. Very, very buoyant pop-up. So basically what I have here is I've chopped off half the boilie. I have then the snowman, I have the main club boilie that I have, and I've been using solar bait for a long time, and I have to say cracking bait, absolutely. You know, over the years I've used a number of different you know, boilies from different companies, made my own mainly, and you know, over the years I've used Hutchison, I've used Carp company, I've used Mainline, I've used Solar, and you know, they're all good baits. You know, these days it's very hard to buy a crap bait, but you know, it's all about confidence. So you kind of stick to, you know, the baits that you have supreme confidence in, and in fairness, for me, Solar tick all the boxes, always have done. So as I say, basically we've got the cream pop up here. It's white, but I've got it glugged so it's a different color. The reason why I wanted to do that was that I wanted to make it look more like a very old freebie on the bottom. This lake gets a lot of bait thrown out. Most of them have been using the cell. Over the last couple of years they've been tweaking them around a bit as well. As results have started to slow down on them, so I wanted to go in with something completely different, so I've gone in with Solar's Club and Cream. It's kind of nearly the same colour as a cell, not quite, but it's got a very different signal, which is what I'm looking for. I don't want to be doing what everyone else is doing. So basically I'm fishing this on the KD rig. As you can see, it's got a little shot here to make sure it pins down, and that sits up above the hook like so. When the fish takes it in, the idea being that that goes in like that with the point facing down, and as the fish then tries to blow it, it'll actually turn and hook. That's the principle behind it. I've caught fish on it before. I'm quite happy with the look of the rig, and seeing it sort of in the water, it looks right. This is the end trap that I'm using, and I find it very, very good. Basically I have it's about 11 inches long. I'm fishing it long because there is a bit of weed out there, and I want this to kind of sit down on any of the chod or the debris. I have a small little sinker here, just again to help the mechanics of the rig, to help it pull down onto that hook point. One other thing I've done is I've sharpened, using my Jag sharpening kit, I've sharpened the hook up so it's now like a needle. Now out of the packet these things are sharp, but they're not sticky sharp. Once you go over it with the Jag stone, it really just makes it so sticky, it's unbelievable, and that's what you're looking for. Now the other rig I'm using is a basic Maglite. Now I've used basically the quarter clips for as long as I can remember, and I always put on about 20 or 30 maggots, and it became a little ball of maggots. I've always done really well on it, but lately, having a look at how maggots disperse underwater, even in cold conditions, they do spread out, and you have like a maggot here, a maggot here. You don't get like concentrations of them. They move around a lot. So what I wanted to do is do the same thing, is just have one sort of fake mag on the actual hook to allow it become a bit of a liner, and then just fish literally 2 on the hook. Now it's a small hook, it's a size 10, and that's a quarter hook. Again, I have end trap in the soft, 20 pound soft, and I find it really good. I don't tend to put any shot on this one. I just leave it natural like it is and let it sink down. You know, if you watch this, the maggots do move. Even in the cold water, they do start wiggling around, and look, it's got me 2 fish so far, so I'm quite happy with that. What I'm doing to, you know, I'm not actually putting out any bait, I'm not putting any freebies, I'm fishing single hook baits. So with the mag liner that I'm using a small PVA bag with a few maggots in it. Now I'm talking about, you know, it's no bigger than that. It's a real tiny one, a quarter of what I would normally use this time of year. And it's purely, I'm just trying to give the fish something to have a look at and go, oh, it's food, I'll have a munch on that, but it's only about a mouthful's worth there. So hopefully they're going to take the hook bait, and it's working, as I say. I did have one run on this, missed it, mind you, it just struck into nothing, it happens. Not using any bait with that, but I'm glugging the hell out of it in stimulant amino. And hopefully that will produce something today, because the conditions are meant to change today, so fingers crossed. This other rod I've got out here, I've got basic chod, and it's just cast up the margins where it is quite choddy. I have a big pop-up on that, big 20mm pop-up. Again, it's one of the white cream ones by Solar. I'm going on the basis that, you know, it'll look like a washed out bait, and if anything does come in the margins, although I don't know why they would want to, because it's only full of ice and it's freezing cold, but carp are funny creatures, and sometimes they turn up in places you don't expect them to. I mean, I've got 2 rods out in the main water fishing, you know, and I'm very happy with the spots I found there. And I know that this did get me a run yesterday, this chod, although it didn't connect again. Funny old take. And it happened just as I cast out. I was actually putting the rod in the rest, putting the bobbin on, and the rod tip whacked round. So I hit it, and it just didn't come about. But these things happen, you know, it's fishing. So that's the rigs. That's where we're at with the rigs. Very basic, very simple to tie up. Really quite long hook lengths. And again, it's because the bottom out there is not as clean as you'd like to think it is. It's not that silty, so the lead's not piling in deep into the silt. But what is out there is a lot of chod, a lot of muck and debris, and you want this to come down. What I do is I put 2 bits of pop-up foam on either side of the hook and trap the hair nice and tight, so that when I'm casting out I can feather it down, and I know that it's going to sink down nicely, hit the bottom and do what it's meant to do. So that's a quick look at the rigs. Running through the bait, keeping it very basic, just single hook baits. This is real winter fishing. You've had a look at the rigs already, and as I said, this is real winter fishing, so you've got to sort of keep everything to the minimum and no bait going out. I'm basically looking for a fish that's moving around to come across my baits on my hair and have a go at it, you know, because it's the only thing out there to have a go at. And you need a little bit of faith in this method, because a lot of people don't like using it because they think, you know, there's nothing to attract the fish. But believe you me, the fish are well used to finding single hook baits out there, and this is a fairly densely populated lake for such a small lake. It's 4.5 acres. We know that there's a minimum of 160 fish, 8 of which are over 30 pound. There's a myriad of 20s in here, and a few backup singles and doubles. So it's a good head of fish. So, you know, at some stage I would be confident that a fish has seen my bait. And even though, you know, it is cold, they still move around, and, you know, certain spells throughout the day they will take off and they will have a mooch, and that's what you're looking for, is that little feeding spell. Now what I would say is, last week was talking to one of the locals here who fishes the lake, and he told me that the feeding spells were between 9 and 11 in the morning. So I was expecting fish then. Turned out last week then he had his fish coming into the evening time, and when it got dark. So the fact that I've had fish yesterday around the 3:30 mark, I would still expect the fish to come around late afternoon, mid to late afternoon, and that's a time then that I would want to be keeping my disturbance of the swim to a minimum, and I would be sort of, you know, not casting around too much, and certainly not going for a wander up the banks. I'd be sitting on my rods waiting for that, because I find come winter time the feeding spells tend to be very localized, and you can nearly set your watch to it. Now I know this is spring and we've got a lot more daylight, so you will have variance in that, I would say, but still in all, I'd be confident that, you know, this afternoon, if we're going to get something, that's when it's going to happen. So that's really it. There's not really much more to tell you. I'll come back to you later on if we get any more fish. I've got Darren up the way there. Big Dal is plodding away now. He's at the moment trying to clear his swim of ice so he can get his rods out or in, either or. And yeah, it's looking up. You can't be confident in these conditions, otherwise you just cry. One of the things when you're fishing out in the cold weather, you've got to keep warm, and your bivvy's going to be the place where you've got to keep the heat in. Twin skins all the way, keeps as much of the condensation out of the tent as is possible, but unfortunately, you know, these conditions, when you're getting down to sub-zero conditions at night, which we've had, you're always going to get condensation forming, and unfortunately it's going to freeze over. One of these things is invaluable. This is the Coleman Black Cat heater, and I've had this a good few years, and I have to say it's a godsend. The heat output isn't massive, but when you actually have it on in the tent over a couple of hours, it really does build up quite nicely a warm area compared to outside, and will certainly help keep you snug during the morning hours when you wake up first thing or just before you go to sleep. Now I wouldn't leave it on all night. I mean, it is a safe product to use in the fact that it doesn't emit any of those obnoxious gases that, you know, if you were burning a normal stove could do, and you know, it's but I still wouldn't leave it on for hours and hours with the tent, you know, zipped up. It does need a little bit of ventilation. Now, in fairness, most of the tents are going to be fairly well ventilated, even though they're pegged in and tight. They're not sort of that well sealed, so you will have some ventilation going through. So what I would normally do is a couple of hours before I go to kip, just heat up the tent, get myself nice and warm, and then when I wake up in the morning, I put it on first thing, and it heats up the tent and defrosts the shell as well, which is a really handy thing. So there are other versions of this style on the market, but I have to say I've been very happy with the Coleman version. So, you know, make sure that you're well wrapped up, even though you do tend to look like a Michelin man in all your gear. Make sure you've got plenty of layers. I mean, I've got about 5 or 6 layers under this suit, and it's well needed, I can tell you, because the wind is raw and the air temperature is only hovering about 1 degree at the moment. Probably not even 1 degree, probably 0 at the moment. But you know, you've got to keep yourself warm. Make sure that you eat well and you drink plenty of hot fluids. Some thoughts from the bivvy. Because it's gone very slow, fishing has really slowed down. It's now, I'd say it must be, yeah, it's actually 20 to 5. And the feeding spell yesterday was about 3:30 to 4:30, so I think we've kind of missed the boat on it today. And I would have thought the conditions were better today. It's certainly a little bit milder, changing the wind condition from northerly to a westerly. At the moment it's a westerly, southwest. Conditions look good, although it's still very, very cold on the wind. I would have thought that change in a better wind would have had the fish maybe moving around a bit. But nothing's happened all day. I'm not the only one who's blanking. There's other guys here. There's 2 other anglers at the moment. But as I said, you know, when you're sitting around, rather than, you know, sort of watching a DVD or whatever when it's real quiet, I have a tendency to tinker and play with stuff. Now, as I said earlier on in the video, I've been using maggots on 2 of my rods now. You know, I had 2 fish yesterday on maggots, and Therefore I've switched to another rod to maggots. Maybe that's what they're looking for. So you've got to ring the changes and kind of react to the fishing situation as it happens. So PVA, I'm putting out a very, very small little funnel web bag of maggots out with each hook bait. Now it's just enough for one mouthful to go up. The water temperature is very, very cold, and therefore PVA doesn't melt as fast as you'd like it to. So I was using earlier on this stuff. It's called Miracle Micro Mesh from the tackle box. Now this stuff is rapid response, and it's designed to really melt away in very cold temperatures. Now I've got to tell the truth on this one. I love this stuff, used it many, many years. This particular batch is probably the guts of 3 or 4 years old. Storage hasn't been too bad, I've kept it fairly dry, but I had this niggle in my head that, because it's so old, that the PVA itself could have degraded slightly, and kind of any moisture in the air could have made it sort of contract and make it less dissolvable. So what I did was I put a bunch of maggots in one PVA bag, tied it up, and then I took the quarter funnel web stuff that I always use. I find it a very good actual PVA, and I put maggots in that and chucked it in the edge just to see what sort of dissolve times were happening. And really interesting, the rapid response, what it did was it burst on one end, and then there was like a tube left, and it contracted, and it stayed like that for about 10-15 minutes, which is way too long in my mind for PVA to be knocking around. The funnel web took longer for it to actually, this is the quarter stuff, it took longer for it to actually start to break down, but when it did it quite rapidly, and the dissolve time was about quarter of the time of the actual this stuff. Now, as I said, I'm not knocking this stuff. It's probably the fact that it's so old and I haven't used it in so long that it kind of has made it, as I say, the PVA fibers contract a little bit and become less soluble. But that's just a guess, that's what I'm thinking's happened. But the quarter funnel stuff really does absolutely disappear in the water, and after a good 5 or 6 minutes there's no residue, and whereas even after 10-15 minutes there was still a white filmy residue off the other PVA. So what I'm saying is, that's, look, I'm not, exalting how wonderful quarter stuff is. I do like it, but what I am trying to say is, when you've got a bit of free time on your hands, you should always take the effort, or make the effort, to kind of do a little bit of testing in the margins, see how things sit, see how rigs sit, and make sure you're happy and you're tweaking everything, because at the end of the day, if you're not confident in something, or you're overconfident in something, what can happen is you can end up putting a rig out that isn't going to fish to its ability. It's not going to dissolve. The PVA is not going to dissolve the way you want it to dissolve, and you'll be sitting there remaining biteless when you could have winkled out one or two. So it's good just to check that all the mechanics of your rigs and all the mechanics of all your bits and pieces that go with your rigs, whether it be bait, PVA or whatever, are working correctly. And the only way you can do that is to get off your ass, get to water's edge, chuck them in, see how they're sitting, and have a tinker and have a fiddle. Right, so it's the end of the session. I came here on a Tuesday night. I came late, so to be honest with you, I don't really count it. I mean, I chucked out the rods anyway. I had no idea where they were going because it was dark. I just flicked them out so that I could just have myself set up for the morning so I could start early. I got up on first light on Wednesday. Wednesday was a Baltic cold day. Half the lake was frozen. I was the only guy here. Later on in the day, Darren arrived into the swim next to me. This swim is known as the Snags, and the reason being is because you've got islands out here, and in between the islands there's a gully, and in the gully is a lot of it's kind of it's like a weed, but it's a funny kind of weed. I don't know the name of it, but it's very snaggy. It's kind of like nearly like underwater brambles. And they have markers out to kind of keep you away from going in too close. And now we've had some horrendous weather. I'm not going to lie to you, it's been absolutely shocking weather. Really cold. We've had sleet, we've had hail, we've had major frosts that have absolutely killed the lake dead, so I'm pretty well chuffed. I had, on the Wednesday, I had 2 fish and I had 2 other runs that I didn't connect with. And then last night, just as it got dark, which was my last full day, we had nothing during the... I thought we'd have a feeding spell, because yesterday the weather changed. We'd been having northerly winds and northeasterly winds and really cold temperatures, and then yesterday it changed and we had a strong westerly, and then it went southwesterly, which we still have now, and last night was really mild. In comparison, I'm talking about in comparison, it's only 2 to 3 degrees instead of minus 2 to 3. No frost this morning, and it rained all night, so I was expecting some of us to have action last night, because it was the most perfect conditions throughout the week. And I actually had pegged that Thursday and Thursday night would be the catching day. Now, yesterday evening, before it got dark, just on the edge of darkness, I had a solid take on the middle rod, lumped into a 16-pound 10 mirror. So I'm chuffed with myself, you know. Darren down the way's blanked. He doesn't know why, because he's in a good spot, and he's in a spot where he's caught a lot of fish in these kind of conditions. But one thing I did notice, everyone here is using slack lines, and even people who fished in this swim are using slack lines, and I don't agree with that, you know. And the reason, my thought process is, we're fishing a spot called the Snags, and it's like that for a reason. It's because there are snags out there, and you know, you can't really fish slack lines. Now, I understand everyone wants to pin their line down so that any fish moving around, they don't get spooked by lines, because it is a shallow water. We've only about 3 or 4 feet out there, and people are, you know, are wary of lines in the water. So what I do, I use the captive back leads by Fox. It means that as soon as I strike on anything, I don't have anything running down the line or getting snagged on the weed beds. There's a lot of weed beds out there, lots of bits of chod, and you know, your line is going up and all over the place. So I tend to use the back leads here, and I also use a flying back lead that, you know, on the cast you can see is at least 15 feet or 20 feet back from the leader. Now, the lead core is banned here, so what I've decided to use is the Vardis pin down, which is like it's an unleaded lead core, so there's no, you know, that's allowed. The leader is allowed, snag leaders, and you know, the sort of the quarter leaders are allowed, and therefore I'm using one of those, and there's no lead core in it, and it's set up with an anti-eject clip system from Quarter. Now, because I'm fishing everything pinned down like that, I don't like fishing a fixed lead in the clip. So what I do is I pinch the clip in with the pliers so it becomes more flattened, and then I use a quick change link so that I can change my hook bait off very quickly. But also what happens is, if you push it into the clip, and when you get a run, it actually pulls straight out the clip. The lead doesn't really move that much. I mean, on the initial hit, when the fish picks up, it will move, it'll hook the fish, but as they shake their head, it comes out, and now it's a running rig. And what happens is, it means that the lead stays in situ, and I will get a take straight up, because if you're fishing slack lines towards snags, you've no way of getting a drop back, and you don't know whether you've had a drop back or not, because it's slack. So by using a running rig system, it can, the line can only go one way, whether it's running towards you or running away from you. And also by having a bit of tension down the line and having it, even though it's pinned down, and you know, my leaders that I'm using, Nevada's pin down leaders that I'm using, are over 4 feet long. So, you know, they are, the last couple of feet are well pinned down in that area because of the flying back lead and the main back leads here. And yeah, I still have quite a, you know, I pay the line off as well, so as not to get, you know, too much tension in the system. But you know, it's tensioned enough that I know as soon as I get any action on the rig end, I've got indication on my lines here, and I find it a very effective way. I've not had any blistering runs. I don't expect them in these cold conditions, but what I've had is very, very solid pull-ups to the top. Now, I'm not using any Quarter stows this time. Jury's out on the Quarter stows. I don't know whether they're a bit overkill for most of the fishing that we do. there's part of the concept about them I like, there's part of them I don't like. So I've just moved back to my old solar bobbins that I love, and I'm using not a chain system, I'm using actually it's a spring system, but it's a very soft spring. The actual cable is very, very soft. As it comes up, it tensions up, so the more the fish is running, the more tension is put on the actual thing. And I'm using the little solar clips on the rods just to make sure that I get, you know, if it does hit the clip, it really pulls that hook home, and then it goes into the bait runner. Haven't had the need to do. I've been on the rods every time I've got a bit of action. I've been on there before it's even hit the top, so I've managed to set the hook myself. There's not really much more I can tell you. It's been a funny old session. It's been a bit of a grueler. Not from the fishing point of view. I mean, the fishing hasn't been easy, but you know, it's just been so bloody cold, and the weather's just been so varied of sunshine, hail, sunshine, sleet, freezing cold, half the lake frozen at night. It's just been all over the place, and it really has knocked the fish off. All the fish have come to one small spot that's only the size of a dustbin lid, and it's taken me about 4 or 5 casts each time to just get it onto the spot where I feel really comfortable, and it's produced the fish each time I've managed to get it into the spot. The other rods I may as well not have had with me because they've been moved around. I've put them in different spots. I'm fishing single hook baits, yes, granted, but you know, I've even, you know, tried to winkle this near rod into the other zone to see if I could pick up a second fish off that same, and nothing. So I mean, it goes to show you, you know, they want it in a certain place at a certain time, and you're going to have it there or you're going to blank. This time of year, I think the fish are very off the bottom anyway. We've had high pressure this week. It's now low pressure. When you get a fall in low pressure, I expect to catch regardless of conditions. But the fall in low pressure happened yesterday, and we only had one run. The day before, we had high pressure, sleet and hail, and I was catching the fish in the sleet and the hail. You know, there's no rhyme or reason for any of this. You just have to kind of get out there and do it, you know, and that's the thing. At the beginning of the week, I looked at all the weather conditions for this week, and I actually considered just saying, what's the point? It's not going to happen for me. It's banging my head, and I'm going to freeze for no reason because the conditions are just so stacked against me. And we're coming up to a bank holiday weekend, and there's only 3 of us on here. Normally every swim's taken on a bank holiday. People are looking at the weather conditions the same and saying, bugger it, I'm not going to bother. And yet I've come and I've had 3 fish. I've had another 2 aborted takes. That's good fishing for this time of year, and I'm chuffed with my results. So sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and, you know, get out here. Last week I came on a Thursday night. It was absolutely much milder weather, and it was absolutely chucking it down. And you know, being a bit sort of unprepared, I kind of set up all my rods. I have to tell a funny story because somebody else is going to say it. I got down, set up in the lashings of rain. It was pitch black. I hadn't a clue where the island was from that swim because I'd never fished that swim before. So I kind of gauged it, pitch dark, thumped out, felt nice and solid on the land, put it in the rest, and then my other rod was chucked in the edge, and another one just in the edge as well, because that's a known spot for catching them in this particular swim. In the morning, I was only fishing a real short session. It was that night, and I was away in the morning, so I didn't get anything. I pulled in the first rod, which was to my left, and there was no bait on the hair. It'd come off. Don't know why, just happened. I'd fished a KD rig on the other one because it is a bit choddy there. I didn't want to use a chod rig, but it is a bit choddy, so I used a big pop-up, 20mm pop-up, and it was actually one of the solar pop-ups I was using, the new cork dust ones, and I put a shot underneath it, which I thought would, that will easily sink it, and no. So I was fishing about yay high off my lead, in very shallow water. So yeah, that was never going to catch. Well, it may have produced something, but it was doubtful. So if you're using the solar pop-ups, they are incredible for chod rigs. They really are very, very buoyant, and they stay buoyant all night long. You could leave them out for 3 or 4 days and they ain't going to lose any of their buoyancy, which is the best bit about them. And so my final rod, I went out towards the island, wound up, picked up, and yes, it was on the island. So unfortunately this this lake don't have any grass carp, so it's a bit of a wasted night. But you know, you could come away despondent out of a trip like that. It was a quick overnighter where everything went wrong. But for me, I don't take it as where everything went wrong. For me, it's a learning curve, because I learned a lot about my rigs. I learned a lot about casting at night and not to lash out on an island. You know, when things go wrong, people can get a bit despondent and just say, "Oh, bugger it, you know, this is a load of toss," you know. But for me, every time I get it wrong, I'm learning. Every time I get it right, I'm learning. So for me, there's no such thing as a wasted trip. Even if you'd come out here and blank, you know, getting everything right, feeling, you know, getting into the rhythm of casting, getting into the rhythm of finding features, you know, and thinking about what you're doing, it all adds up to your library that helps you then down the line have some bumper catches. So that's been it for today. I'll show you a quick picture of the 1610 I had last night, and because I didn't get it on camera, on film, because it was pitch dark, and there was no way I was going to sack it up overnight, because in these conditions I think that would be a bit unfair just to get a bit of film on it. And so we released it very quickly last night. But yeah, it's been a nice trip. I've enjoyed myself. I have been cold, but I'm still quite chuffed because we have had a few fish. Something else that, you know, I'm just talking to Big D down the way down. We were a bit confused as to where all the fish are. Look, it's a small lake. It's only 4.5 acres. There's at least 160 fish that we know of, and we reckon there's probably another 40 odd fish of small pasties that are growing up, you know, 2-3 pounders. So there's at least 200 fish in the lake. That's 4.5 acres, and they got to be somewhere. Now, they can't all be in one little hole that I'm catching on one rod. So you've got to say, you know, are they moving around? Are they mid-water? And I remember fishing a place down in Cork for a good few years, Ballincollig, and in winter we used to fish it a lot in winter, and you'd catch well in the winter. But this particular session, I was down for a week. I had the boat with me in the Echo Sounder, and we weren't getting any bites. And what happened was, I went out, and there was one corner lake. Lake's quite deep. Ballincollig had depths of about 20 feet by the tower. It was a dam. It was, you know, deep water on one end and shallow water on the other, and it kind of went up in it's a pretty featureless lake. But this particular corner where the overflow was, it got down to about 16 feet right out. And on the Echo Sounder, you were able to see that all the fish were very tightly shoaled, about 10 foot up, in about 14 or 15 feet of water. So what I did was, I came back to shore and stuck out a marker float and went down the ledge, because there was a nice sloping ledge all the way down. And I came out to where I found 10 feet, and I put all my baits on the 10-foot level. And I had 4 or 5 runs off that. Biggest was about 17 pound 10. And what it proved to me was, if you can find a band or the zone that they're sitting in, you have a chance of catching them. Because in winter, I do believe they sit off the bottom and they shoal up tight and they just hang mid-water. Now, there's some deep water down the end here, and as I just said to Big D there, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we went out in the Echo Sounder and we were able to, you know, find fish. We'd find them hanging mid-water or at a certain level, and maybe a zig rig chucked out to where they're all sort of static in the water might produce a fish. It's just a theory. It's not a bad one, but you know, this is what you've got to be doing. You've got to be continuously thinking about the water in front of you and where your head's at. And yeah, as I say, it's just food for thought. So I think that's the secret of fishing. You know, you've got to always be thinking. You can't just sit back and go, yeah, it's not happening, right, I'm going to read my book or watch a DVD. You know, you've got to have your fishing head on, and you've got to keep thinking, what am I doing right, what am I doing wrong, and if I'm not catching, why not, what tweaks can I make to kind of buy a bite. If you are catching, well then, happy days, you're doing things right. So sometimes what you should be doing though is if you get one rod that's producing all the time, you leave that rod alone, keep doing what you're doing on that rod, and use your other rods as experiments to start flinging around and find other areas if they're not catching. And in fairness, they haven't. And I have tried other things. I've moved the baits around, I've tried them in different areas, I've tried different rigs, tried different baits, and I can't buy a bite on them. So I'm obviously in the wrong zone for where the fish want to feed. As I said, this is it from Oddie's Angling TV for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed the journey, and we've got a load of reviews coming down the line with bits of tackle and whatever, so keep an eye out for us. If you're looking to stock up on some new fishing gear, end tackle or bait, then we suggest you take a look at mainirishangling.com for the cheapest prices in Ireland.